Hello boys and girls, today we're going to be writing some sentences to describe our rebuild of the city. So we're going to be using sentences to express our ideas and our designs. So you're going to need your drawing from yesterday, your architect's sketch and some paper. And we're going to write sentences to explain why we've redesigned our city like this. Okay, so before we start writing our sentences, we need to remember the key elements of a good sentence. So we're going to need capital letters, finger spaces, and full stops. And you might want to use some conjunctions like the word because or so to explain. Also, it would be nice if you could use different sentence openers to introduce your sentences. Let's have a look at our design from yesterday. I made the river more accessible, easier to get water out of. I made the streets wider, so if there was another fire, it would be much safer. I added pipes and drains, so the streets were much cleaner for all the sewerage that ran out. I added bins to my street to make them much cleaner. I added a pavement to make it much safer. I also would rebuild my houses using brick and tiles rather than wood because these materials are much less flammable. Now remember, flammable means that it's easy to burn, whereas less flammable means that they're not as easy to burn. So I'm just going to put my design to the side right here to help me write my sentences. My first one is going to be about making the streets wider. And when I rebuild the city, I want to make the streets wider because if there was another fire, it would make it much safer. So I would write, I would rebuild the city with wider, or you could put larger, wider streets, because if there was another fire, the streets and the houses, the streets would be much safer. Okay, back to my picture. Now I'm going to be talking about the materials that I rebuilt the house from. I'm going to just change the way I open my sentence. Rather than I would, I'm going to have also. I would. Also, I would rebuild the houses, remembering my capital letters and finger spaces throughout. I would rebuild the houses out of brick and tiles rather than, and who can remember what material the houses were built out of? That's right, wood. I would build them out of brick and tiles rather than wood because these materials are less, and then I'm going to use my fancy word, flammable, are less flammable. Just have to squeeze around my tripod here. Are less flammable, which makes them safer. Okay, now I'm going to write about making the river more accessible, which means you can get to the river much more easily. I'm going to change the way I open my sentence now from I would or also I would to if I was to rebuild the city, if I was to rebuild the city, Or if I was to rebuild London, I would make the River Thames, and I need my capital letters because it's a proper noun, it's the name of a river, would make the River Thames more accessible. Ooh, Miss Ford, fancy. Accessible. So, oh, one of those conjunctions there, I've got because and so. So it would be easier to collect water. Miss Ford's going to leave her sentences there, but you're going to carry on, and you can obviously write about the streets and the houses and the river, and then add some further sentences about your design. You might have included bins like me. You might have included drainage to make the streets much cleaner. You might have included a pavement to make the street much safer for people to walk along. So use your architect design and write some sentences to explain why you've chosen to design your rebuild like this. Okay, boys and girls, now it's your turn. Try your best to really explain why you have chosen to redesign your city in the way you have. Don't forget, capital letters, finger spaces and full stops. Try and use those words like so and because to explain even further. We can't wait to read your sentences about your rebuild. Keep up the great work. See you soon. Bye.